Dedication by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. Quote, "From quiet home and first beginning, out to the undiscovered ends, there's nothing worth the wear of winning but laughter and the love of friends." Unquote. My verses in your path I lay, and do not deem me indiscreet if I should say that surely they could find no haven half so sweet as at your feet. Unworthy little rhymes are these. Tread tenderly upon them, please. One single favor do I crave, which is that you regard my pen as your devoted humble slave. Most fortunate shall I be then of mortal men, for what more happiness ensures than work in service such as yours? Should you be pleased at any time to dip into this shallow brook of simple, unpretentious rhyme, or chance with favoring smile to look upon my book, don't mention such a fact out loud, or haply I shall grow too proud. Accept these verses then, I pray, disarming press and public too, for what can hostile critics say? What else is left for them to do, because of you, but view with kindness this collection, which bears the seal of your protection? End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Foreword by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Diana Schmidt. All great biographers possess, besides a thirst for information, that talent which commands success. I mean, of course, imagination, combining with excessive tact a total disregard for fact. Boswell and Froude and all the rest, with just sufficient grounds to go on, could only tell the world at best what great men did and thought and so on. But I, of course, can speak to you about the things they didn't do. I don't rely on breadth of mind, on wit or powers of observation. Carnegie's libraries, I find, a fruitful source of inspiration. The new Encyclopedia Brit has helped me too a little bit. In any case I cannot fail, with such a range of mental vision, so deep a passion for detail, and such meticulous precision. I pity men like Sidney Lee, how jealous they must be of me! 'Tis easy work to be exact, I have no fear of contradiction, since it has been allowed that fact is stranger far than any fiction. But what demands the truest wit is knowing what one should omit. Carlyle, for instance, finds no place among my list of lubrications, because I have no wish to face the righteous wrath of his relations. Whatever feud they have with Froude, no one can say that I was rude. This work is written to supply a long-felt want among beginners, a handbook where the student's eye may read the lives of saints and sinners, and learn without undue expense the fruits of their experience. A book to buy and give away, to fill the youthful with ambition, for even they may hope some day to share the author's erudition. So not in vain, nor void of gain, the work of his colossal brain. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Theodore Roosevelt by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. Alert as bird or early worm, yet gifted with those courtly ways which connoisseurs correctly term the tout qu'il y a de Louis XVI. He reigns by popular assent, the people's peerless president. Behold him, squarely built and small, with hands that would resemble lists, did they not forcibly recall the contour of Fitzsimmons' fists, beneath whose velvet gloves you feel the politician's grip of steel. Accomplished as a king should be, and autocratic as a czar. To him all classes bow the knee, in spotless Washington afar. And while his jealous rivals scoff, he wears the smile that won't come off. In him combined we critics find the diplomatic skill of Choate, Elijah Dowie's breadth of mind, and Chauncey's fund of anecdote. He joins the morals of Susanna to Dr. Munyon's bedside manner. The rugged virtues of his race he softens with a Dewey's tact, combining Shafter's easy grace with all Bourke Cochrane's love of fact. To Dooley's powers of observation he adds the charms of Carrie Nation. In him we see a devotee of what is called the simpler life, to tell the naked truth and be contented with a single wife. Luxurious living he abhors, and takes his pleasures out of doors. And since his sole delight and pride are exercise and open air, his spirit chafes at being tied all day to an official chair. The bellboys in the room beneath can hear him gnash his serried teeth. In summertime he can't resist a country gallop on his cob, so like a thorough altruist he lets another do his job. In winter he will work all day, but when the sun shines he makes hay. And thus, in spite of office ties, he manages to take a lot of healthy outdoor exercise where other presidents have not, as I can prove by drawing your attention to his carte du jour. At 6 a.m. he shoots a bear. At 8 he schools a restive horse. From 10 to 4 he takes the air. He doesn't take it all, of course. And then at 5 o'clock, maybe, some colored man drops in to tea. At intervals throughout the day, he sprints around the house, or if his residence is Oyster Bay, he races up and down the cliff, while seagulls scream about his legs or hasten home to hide their eggs. A man of deeds, not words, is he, who never stooped to roll a log. Agile as fond gazelle or flea, sagacious as an indoor dog, in him we find a spacious mind, uncribbed, uncabined, unconfined. In martial exploits he delights, and has no fear of war's alarms, the hero of 100 fights, since first he was a child in arms. Like battle horse, when bugles bray, he champs his bit and tries to neigh. And if the army of the state is always in such perfect trim, well organized and up to date, this grand result is due to him. For while his country reaped the fruit, 'twas he alone could reach the root. And spite of jeers that foes have hurled, no problems can his soul perplex. He lectures women of the world upon the duties of their sex, and with unfailing courage thrusts his spoke within the wheels of trusts. No private ends has he to serve, no dirty linen needs to wash, a man of quite colossal nerve, who lives sans peur et sans reproche. In modo suaviter, maybe, but then how fortiter in re. A lion is his crest, you know, Columbia stooping to caress it, with vi et armis writ below, nemo impune me lacessit. His motto, as you've already read, semper paratus, always Teddy. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Bacon by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Romano. In far Elizabethan days, ho by my halidome gadzooks, Lord Bacon wrote his own essays, and lots of other people's books, annexing as a pseudonym each author's name that suited him. All notoriety he'd shirk, nor sought for literary credit, although the best of Shakespeare's work was his, for Mrs. Gallup said it, and she, poor lady, I suppose, has read the whole of it, and knows. Such was his kind, unselfish plan, that he allowed a rude, unshaven, ill-educated actor-man to style himself the Bard of Avon, although 'twas he, and not this fellow, who wrote The Tempest and Othello. For right throughout his works there is a cipher hid, which makes it certain that all Pope's Iliad is his, and the Anatomy of Burton. There's not a volume you can name to which he has not laid a claim. He is responsible, I wot, for Euclid's lucid demonstrations, the early works of Walter Scott, and the Aurelian Meditations, also the House with Seven Gables, and most of Aesop's so-called fables. And once when he annoyed the Queen, and wished to gain the royal pardon, he wrote his masterpiece, I mean, that work about her German garden, and published just before his death the Visits of Elizabeth. Yet peradventure we are wrong, for just as probable the chance is that all these volumes may belong to someone else and not to Francis. I think, though I may be mistaken, that Shakespeare wrote the works of Bacon. Moral: if you approach the Mosque of Fame and seek to climb its tallest steeple, just lodge a literary claim against the works of other people. And though the press may not receive it, a few old ladies will believe it. For instance, I of proof could bring sufficient to convince the layman that I had written everything attributed to Stanley Weyman. In common justice I should pocket the royalties of S.R. Crockett. And anyone can plainly see, without the wit of Machiavelli, that Hall Caines look alike to me, since I am Ouida and Corelli. Yes, I am Rudyard Kipling truly, and the immortal Mr. Dooley. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Adam by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Kathleen. In history he holds a place, unique, unparalleled, sublime. The first of all the human race. Yes, that was Adam, all the time. It didn't matter if he burst, he simply had to get there first. A simple child of nature he, whose life was primitive and rude. His wants were few, his manners free. All kinds of clothing he eschewed. He might be seen in any weather, in what is called the altogether. The luxuries that we enjoy he never had, so never missed. Appliances that we employ for saving work did not exist. He would have found them useless too, not having any work to do. He never wrote a business note. He had no creditors to pay. He was not pestered for his vote, not having one to give away. And, living utterly alone, he did not need a telephone. The joys of indolence he knew, in his remote and peaceful clime. He did just what he wanted to, nor ever said he hadn't time. And this was natural because he had whatever time there was. His pulse was strong, his health was good. He had no fads of meat or drink, of tonic waters, breakfast food, or pills for persons who are pink. No cloud of indigestion lay across the sunshine of his day, and, when he went to bed each night, he made his couch upon the soil. The glowworms gave him all his light. He hadn't heard of Standard Oil. At dawn he woke, then slept again. He never had to catch a train. A happy solitary life, but soon he found it dull. I ween so thought that he would like a wife, when Eve appeared upon the scene, and we will draw a kindly veil over the sequel to this tale. Moral: ye bachelors, contented be with what the future holds for you. Pity the married man, for he has nothing to look forward to hunger for with bated breath, nothing, that is to say, but death. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Joan of Arc by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Kathleen. From Pimlico to Central Park, from Timbuktu to Rotten Row, who has not heard of Joan of Arc? His tragic tale who does not know? And how he put his life to stake for principle and country's sake? This simple person of Lorraine had thoughts of nothing but romance, and longed to see a king again upon the battered throne of France. With Charles VII crowned at Rheims, he realized his fondest dreams. Then came the fight at Compiègne, where he was captured by the foe, and lots of vulgar foreign men caught hold and wouldn't let him go. "Please don't," he begged them, in despair. "You're disarranging all my hair." Unmoved by grace of form or face, these brutes, whose hearts were quite opaque, at Rouen in the market place, secured him tightly to a stake, behaviour which cannot be viewed as other than extremely rude. Poor Joan of Arc, of course, was bound to be the centre of the show, when, having piled the faggots round, they lit him up and let him go, which surely strikes the modern mind as thoughtless, not to say unkind. But though he died, his deathless name in history holds a noble place, and brings the blush of conscious shame to any Anglo-Saxon face. Perfidious truly was the nation which caused his premature cremation. I showed these verses to a friend, inviting him to criticize. He read them slowly to the end, then asked me, with a mild surprise, "What was your object," he began, "in making Joan of Arc a man?" I hastened to the library which kind Carnegie gave the town, searched Section B, Biography, and took 6 bulky volumes down, then studied all one livelong night, and found, alas! my friend was right. I'm sorry, for it gives me pain to think of such a waste of rhyme. I'd write the poem all again, only I can't afford the time. It's rather late to change it now. I can't be bothered anyhow. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Paderewski by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. While other men of note have had a certain local reputation, they never could compare with Pad. Forgive this terse abbreviation. Loot, Orpheus may have been all right. Cap, Paderewski's out of sight. No lunatic competing in the game of Arctic exploration can ever really hope to win more pleasures of anticipation than he who fixes as his goal so satisfactory a pole. The grand piano is his forte, and when he treads upon its pedals, weak women weep and strong men snort, while Cuban veterans with medals grow kind of bleary-eyed and soppy, and journalists forget their copy. And as he makes the keyboard smart, or softly on its surface lingers, he plays upon the public's heart and holds it there beneath his fingers. Caresses, teases, pokes or squeezes, does just exactly as he pleases. And oh, the hair upon his head, hay-colored with a touch of Titian. He's under contract, so 'tis said, to keep it in this wild condition. All those who wish for thatch like Pad's should buy this space to let for ads. On concert platforms he performs, where ladies, matrons, maids, or misses surround his feet in perfect swarms and try to waft him fat, damp kisses, till he takes refuge in his hair and sits serenely smiling there. He draws the teardrop to the eye of dullest dude or quaintest Quaker. The instrument he plays is by the very best piano maker, whose name I hope you won't forget is, once again, this space to let. Before the style of his technique, the science of his execution, the blackest criminal grows weak and makes a moral resolution, requiring all his strength of will before he even robs a till. Rough soldiers from the seat of war, I never understood what seat meant, have ceased to swear or hit the jar after a course of Ruski's treatment. 'Tis more persuasive and as sure as, shall we say, the water cure. Thus on triumphantly he goes, a long succession of successes, and nobody exactly knows just how much income he possesses. He makes sufficient, if not more, to keep the wolf from the stage door. And when he plays a polonaise, his own unrivaled composition, the entertainment well repays the prices charged one for admission. But still, as ladies all declare, his crowning glory is his hair. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
William Tell by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Kathleen. All persons who, by way of joke, point loaded guns at one another, a state of things which ends in smoke and murder of an aunt or brother, will find that it repays them well to note the tale of William Tell. He was a patriotic Swiss, whose skill was such with bow and arrow, he never had been known to miss a target, howsoever narrow. His archery could well defy the needle or the camel's eye, and when the hated Austrian invaded his beloved country, this simple man at once began to treat the foe with calm effrontery, and gave a sporting exhibition, to which he charged 10 cents admission. He set his son against a tree, upon his head an apple placing, next measured paces 33, and turned about, his offspring facing, then chose an arrow, drew his bow, and all the people murmured, "Oh!" No sound disturbed the morning air. You could have heard a tea-tray falling, save in the virgin forest, where a chipmunk to his mate was calling, where sang the giddy martingale, or snaffle wooed the genial quail. But, drowning cry of beast or bird, there rose the hush of expectation, no whispered converse, not a word from the surrounding population, a tactful silence as of death, while people held each other's breath. The bow rang out, the arrow sped, before a man could turn completely, all scatheless shone the offspring's head. The apple lay divided neatly. The 10-cent public gave a roar, and apoplectic shrieked encore. They kissed the hero, clasped his hand, in search of autographs pursued him, escorted with the local band, cheered, banqueted, and interviewed him, demanding how he shot so well. But simple William would not tell. The Austrians, without a word, retired at once across the border, and thence on William they conferred 2 medals and a foreign order, and tactfully addressed the bill, "Hereditary Archduke Will," and in the piping times of peace, such luxury his life was wrapped in, he got the chiefship of police, and made his son a precinct captain, wore celluloid white cuffs and collars, and absolutely rolled in dollars. Still, to the end, whenever Will with physical problems had to grapple, he called to mind his offspring's skill at balancing the homely apple, and made him use his level head at balancing accounts instead. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Diogenes by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. He stopped inside a tub from choice, but otherwise was well conducted, although he raised a rasping voice to persons who his view obstructed, and threw a boot at anyone who robbed him of his patch of sun. And thus he lived, without expense, arrayed in somewhat scant apparel, his customary residence the limits of an empty barrel. His spirits would perforce be good, maturing slowly in the wood. With lamp alight he sought at night for honest men his ruling passion, but either he was short of sight, or honest men were out of fashion. He never found one, so he said, they probably were all in bed. At last, when he was very old, he got abducted by a pirate, and to a man of Corinth sold, at an exorbitantly high rate. His owner called him Sunny Jim, and made an indoor pet of him. And soon, as one may well suppose, he learnt the very choicest manners, could balance sugar on his nose, or sit right up and smoke Havanas, or swim into the pond for sticks. There was no limit to his tricks. He never tasted wine nor meat, but ate in full and plenteous measure grape nuts and force and shredded wheat, pretending that they gave him pleasure. At length, at 89, he died of a too strenuous inside. Had but this worthy cynic been a member of our favored nation, Niagara he might have seen, and realized a new sensation, if he had set himself the task to brave the rapids in his cask. Or, if his ghost once more began, with lighted lamp, his ancient mission, and searched the city for a man whose honesty outsoared suspicion, we could provide him in New York a nice, if somewhat lengthy, walk. Moral: though thumping tubs is easy work, with which no critic cares to quarrel, there may be charms about a Turk, policemen even may be moral. And, though they never get found out, there are some honest men about. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Sir Thomas Lipton by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. Of all the sportsmen now afloat upon the waters of this planet, no better ever manned a boat, or paid another man to man it, and won a kindly public's heart, like dear Sir Thomas Lipton, Bart. Behind a counter as a child he wooed Dame Fortune, fair but fickle, until at last one day she smiled upon his spices and his pickle, and all the world rejoiced to see plain Thomas Lipton made Sir T. He won the trade, his name was made, in country house or London gutter, all classes found his marmalade a perfect substitute for butter. His jam in loudest praise was sung, his sauces were on every tongue. He built a yacht, that is to say, he paid another man to build it, with all the patents of the day, regardless of the cost he filled it, and hired, which was expensive too, at least 3 captains and a crew. And, being properly brought up, a member of that sober nation, which ever loves to raise the cup that cheers without inebriation, he saw an opening if he took his lifting powers to Sandy Hook. And there his hospitality was always welcome to the masses, as on the good ship Erin he provided luncheons for all classes, where poets, publicans, and peers retained his spoons as souvenirs. But though each boat of his that sailed was like the last one, only better, to lift the cup she always failed, because the Yankees wouldn't let her, a state of things which was not quite what Englishmen would term polite. His efforts were, alas, in vain. He couldn't beat the pot defender. Again he tried, and yet again. He might as well have sailed a tender. At last he cried, "I give it up! America can keep her cup. For she and she alone has got the proper breed of modern yachtsmen. If only I had hired a lot of Swedes, Norwegians, and Scotsmen, I might have met with calm defiance the crew on which she placed reliance. But, as the matter stands, instead of knowing what a well-fought fight is, I'm feted, dined, and banqueted until I get appendicitis, and probably shall end my life by marrying a Yankee wife. I felt it when the line was crossed. I hold it true, whate'er befall. 'Tis better to have luffed and lost than never to have luffed at all. My shareholders must be content with such a good advertisement. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Marat by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. It is impossible to do 3 different kinds of things at once, a fact that must be patent to the brain-pan of the dullest dunce. Yet Marat somehow never knew it, and died in an attempt to do it. A revolutionist was he, the people's friend, they called him so, and many such there used to be in France 100 years ago. For further notice, see Carlyle, if you can grapple with his style. His manners were so debonair, he took a hip bath every day, would sit and write his letters there in quite an unself-conscious way. And if you wished to interview him, his housekeeper would take you to him. But Charlotte Corday came along, a Norman noble's nobler daughter, intent to right her country's wrong and put an end to ceaseless slaughter. In Marat she descried a victim, so bought a knife and promptly pricked him. Poor Marat, who, as his wont, was planning further revolutions, the while he washed, exclaimed, "Oh, don't! You're interrupting my ablutions! I can't escape! It isn't fair! A sponge is all I have to wear!" But Charlotte firmly answered, "Bosh! How could she so forget good breeding? While you sit there and calmly wash, the noblest hearts in France are bleeding." Then jabbed him in those vital places where ordinary men wear braces. So perished Marat, in his way to prove a lesson apt and scathing, from which young people of today may learn the dangers of mixed bathing, and shun the thankless operation of sponging on a rich relation. Moral: Ye Democrats who plan and plot schemes to decapitate your betters, remember that a bath is not the proper place for writing letters, nor one which Providence intends for interviews with lady friends. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Ananias by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. When golf was in its childhood still, and not the sport that now it is, when no one knew of Bunker Hill, or spoke of Boston tea parties, one man there was who played the game, and Ananias was his name. But little else of him we know, save that his grasp of facts was slack. And yet, as circumstances show, he was a golfomaniac. And thus biographers relate the story of his tragic fate. He occupied his final scene, in golfing parlance, so 'tis said, in practicing upon the green, and after a bad lie, lay dead. Then came Sapphira. She, poor soul, after a worse lie, halved the whole. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Nero by Harry Graham. Read for LibriVox.org by Romano. The portrait that I seek to paint is of no ordinary hero, no customary plaster saint, for nothing of the sort was Nero. He was an emperor, but then he had his faults like other men. And first, a foolish thing to do, he turned his hand to matricide, and straight his aged mother slew. The poor old lady promptly died. 'Tis surely wrong to kill one's mother, since one can hardly get another. He was a hearty feeder too, and onto his digestion thrust all kinds of fatty foods, and grew robust, with accent on the bust. Sweets are, I quote from memory, the uses of obesity. He married twice 2 ladies fair, agreed in turn to be his wife, to board his slender bark and share his fate upon the stream of life. Forgive me if I mention this, as being true connubial bliss. His talent on the violin he was forever proud of showing. The tone that he produced was thin, nor could one loudly praise his bowing. But persons whom he played before were almost sure to ask for more. For he decreed that any who did not encore him or applaud should be beheaded, cut in two, hanged, flayed alive, and sent abroad. So it was natural that they who came to cough remained to pray. He felt no sympathy for those who had not lots to drink and eat, who wore unfashionable clothes and strove to make the 2 ends meet. They drew no tears, the short and simple flannels of the poor, from him. To Christians he was far from kind. They met with his disapprobation. The choicest tortures he designed for folks of their denomination. And all historians insist that he was no philanthropist. To lampposts he would oft attach a Jew immersed in paraffin, apply a patent safety match, and smile as he surveyed the scene. 'Twas possible in Rome at night to read a book by Israelite. And when occurred the famous fire, of which some say he was the starter, he roused the corporation's ire by playing Braga's Serenata. 'Tis said that when he changed to Handel, the play was hardly worth the scandal. He crowned his long career at last by one supreme and final action, which after such a lurid past gave universal satisfaction, and not one poor relation cried when he committed suicide. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
Aftword by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. The feast is ended, as we've seen. 'Tis time the vacant board to quit. By vacant board I do not mean my host of readers, not a bit. For they, the mentally elite, are stimulated and replete. The fare that I provide is light, but don't, I pray, look down upon it. Such verse is just as hard to write as any sentimental sonnet. It looks a simple task, may be. Well, try your hand at it and see. Don't fancy, too, that I dispense with study or eschew research. Sufficient books of reference I have to fill the highest church. I've no dislike of work, I swear. It's doing it that I can't bear. Abuse or praise me, as you choose. There is no limit to my patience. My verse the London Daily News once styled mephitic exhalations. I lived that down, don't ask me how, and nothing really hurts me now. For while my stricken soul survived, with wounded pride and dulled ambition, my humble book of verses thrived, and quite outgrew the old edition. So now I have exhaled some more, mephitically, as before. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain. Postlude by Harry Graham, read for LibriVox.org by Heather James. The book is finished. With a sigh, my pen upon the desk I lay. The weary task is o'er, and I am off upon a holiday. To Paris, lovely Paris, where I have a little ventre à terre. And though my verses may be weak, and call for your severest strictures, the illustrations are unique. I really never saw such pictures. At times, in my unthinking way, I almost hope I never may. End of Misrepresentative Men by Harry Graham. This recording is in the public domain.